Hello guys and welcome back. Today we are covering everything we know about Borderlands 3 up to 2019. This video is a direct follow-up to my two previous videos covering everything we know up to 2018 and then what we've learned so far in 2018. So if you haven't seen those yet, go check them out and then come back to finish this video. All the sources will be down below with timestamps as well. Follow me on Twitter at Hayder, and with that, let's get right into it. So our first news story starts in March. It comes from Supmato, who found some Borderlands 3 info on the Nirvana live show episode 11 with Scott Kester, an art director at Gearbox Software, and Randy Pitchford. So at around the 1 hour mark, Randy Pitchford mentions Gearbox's work on the Borderlands 3, presumably character, and how they make characters in general. So he says that Brick took 2 days to make, TK Baja took less than an hour, and start to finish on this new unannounced character, codenamed Iron Bear character, took 7 months from start to completion.
One thing that there's a character, you'll know which one I'm talking about, that I don't know if you realize this, I'm sure you do, from start to the point where we felt like, okay, that it's pretty done now. 7 months. It's, I'll just say Iron Bear.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
7 months. And I think it needed it.
Yeah.
It needed all 7 of those months. And I'm pretty stoked on that whole package. I'm pretty stoked on it.
Yeah, it's wild sometimes.
That's not possible to do where you just do it in a week.
No.
So they also say how much work this character took and implies good things with Gearbox taking their time with Borderlands 3. And this info lines up with Mosey with her Iron Bear mech and Gearbox showing off this character in the first tech demo. This is the first character they worked on for Borderlands 3, which we will expand on later. Also, something that's been happening all year is Gearbox has been bringing in focus testers, presumably to see how well the general market reacts to Borderlands 3, whether that's trailers or just what characters to push, how to market the game, and also play testers to actually come in, play the game, find bugs, and help Gearbox get it ready for a release. There isn't any specific month that this has been happening, but it's been on and off for this entire year. Then in April, we got the leak right before E3 that Gearbox was in talks to sign a deal with Microsoft for exclusive marketing rights. This leak came from Rectify Gaming, which has a great track record for Microsoft leaks in particular, which is what made this leak so believable at the time. Then, when Borderlands 3 wasn't shown at E3, people let go of these rumors, especially when Randy Pitchford came out twice on Twitter denying these Microsoft rumors, saying, so, at Do You Even Fez said, quote, on top of poorly thought out aspects, that's what's happened with the pre-sequel. It was hyped to oblivion and back, and when it came out, the expectation was way too high. On top of that, Gearbox has signed Microsoft exclusive rights to advertising of Borderlands 3. Randy Pitchford responded saying, where are you getting that? Gearbox signed no such thing with Microsoft. How are these things becoming propagated as fact when there's zero basis in reality? Then the fan tagged Morning Afterkill, another Borderlands YouTuber who was covering these rumors. Morning Afterkill then jumped into the conversation saying, quote, it was reported by multiple reputable sources that Microsoft will have exclusive marketing rights for Borderlands 3 last week. Any official retort or statement to debunk otherwise would be very helpful. Randy Pitchford then said, quote, clearly reported by 0 reputable sources. I think to be reputable, one must care about and pursue truth. Reposting news from others without checking the source is one of the failures of digital journalism. So if this was the end of the story, I wouldn't have mentioned it. But members in the community believe these rumors were true, and at one point Gearbox was in the talks with Microsoft for exclusive marketing rights. So not any exclusive content, but whenever a Borderlands 3 trailer would be shown, it would be played on an Xbox, a Microsoft logo would come up, basically to kind of get people to think that Borderlands 3, you need to have an Xbox for it. And it still could be possible that these rumors are true. Whether or not you want to believe them though is up to you. So the next story has to do with the fake Borderlands 3 June 10 leak. I covered most of it in my last video, but there is one more thing I want to mention, which is Randy Pitchford's response to the leak. One of the YouTubers who covered the leak was Kakas HD, and his video was tweeted to Randy Pitchford asking, quote, how much should we consider things like this serious? Randy Pitchford responded saying, quote, what do you think? Another fan responded saying, "I think the leak is probably bogus. I do like the idea of visiting new planets though. Not necessarily the idea of space-based ship combat though." And Randy Pitchford said, "I think what you think is pretty smart." So space travel is something we've been hearing about for a while. The most notable planet that's always brought up and that's been hinted at is Promethea. So it is cool to hear that Randy Pitchford is kind of getting more open to confirming things, or at least letting people put things together and not just dismissing everything. Most likely knew we were going to go to Promethea, and the only way to get there is space travel, but it is nice to hear Randy Pitchford say it. And space combat isn't something that's really necessary through and through. Borderlands is a first-person shooter, and that's where it excels. The next stories happened in May. First, we learned through LinkedIn that the design director of Gearbox Software had left the company. John Mulkey lists himself on LinkedIn as the design director at Gearbox Software from December 2011 to May 2018, where he said, "After I moved on to Battleborn, worked on Borderlands 3, and took the creative director role of an unannounced new tentpole IP." So it is cool to hear that Borderlands 3 was at a point where the design director could move from Borderlands 3 onto something else. I don't think Gearbox would be taking people off the game unless they thought it was at a good enough spot where they're hitting their deadlines, they're right where they want to be, and the game is at a good spot. So it's sad that he left, but it is cool that Gearbox is now already looking to the future. The next story has to do with Walmart Canada and their huge leak before E3. There were a ton of games leaked that were not announced at the time, including Rage 2, a new Splinter Cell, and most important for you guys, Borderlands 3. Because Bethesda came out and confirmed Rage 2, and many other companies followed suit, people were expecting Borderlands 3 to be announced or even shown at E3. Obviously, this didn't end up happening, and Shack News reported on May 14th that Gearbox told them that, quote, "A representative from Gearbox Software announced to a room of journalists earlier today that there will be no Borderlands presence at E3 whatsoever. Gearbox Software will have other titles to show off to gamers during the conference next month." Then one day later, Randy Pitchford came out and did a Twitter thread talking about magic and deception in the industry, and he mentions Borderlands 3 directly, saying, quote, "For example, I could write it out now precisely and specifically that Borderlands 3 will not be at E3, and many of you will choose not to believe it. Many of you will find a way to interpret the intent to suit what you want to believe, regardless of what is true. In fact, this aspect of human nature is so powerful that it is more likely this thread will increase the volume of the debate rather than diminish it. It feels as if Borderlands 3 may be destined to be the next Half-Life 3 in that regard." So obviously hearing any game being referred to as the next Half-Life is never reassuring, but I do understand Randy's sentiment that he could directly claim that Borderlands 3 will not be announced at any given event, and there will always be those people who think it's a conspiracy. Even people still believing the Microsoft rumors directly shows this. But on the flip side of the coin, Randy Pitchford denies everything, even things that have been confirmed. Later on in the video, I'll talk about the localization rumors, which he came out and denied many times, and now it's being confirmed almost direct. Another update we got in May was the updated Take-Two Interactive earnings report. We covered last year's report and last year's video, where it mentioned an unannounced game from one of 2K's biggest franchises is set to be released in 2018, which is why originally we thought Borderlands 3 was going to come this year. But now, with the new report, it says, quote, "The highly anticipated title from one of 2K's biggest franchises, which had been planned for release during the current fiscal year, is now planned for launch during fiscal 2020 to allow for additional development time. We remain as excited as ever about this title and expect it to enhance our results next fiscal year." So most likely what happened is Red Dead and Borderlands 3, they both wanted to release this year. Borderlands 3 wasn't finished or close where Gearbox wanted to release it, and Red Dead was, so Red Dead got pushed out, Borderlands 3 got pushed a year. It gives Gearbox more time, not rushing anything out just for the sake of it, and it helps Take-Two reach their goal of one AAA title per year. The next two stories are both in the form of tweets. The first is from the Nerdvana live show, which announced on May 25 that said, quote, "Update, Nerdvana Live will be off air through the summer. Stay tuned for new content coming up in the fall." So while this isn't directly related to Borderlands 3, we have gotten a lot of info about the game through this live show, and some have even speculated that the show is on hiatus due to how much information Randy Pitchford has given out on this show. The next story comes from Michael Patcher, who said, quote, I have it on very good authority that Borderlands 3, whenever it eventually comes, will have a Battle Royale mode that allows 1 billion players at once. This was obviously a big joke, but Randy Pitchford did take the time to respond anyways and say, quote, unfortunately, the Borderlands engine only allows for 4 players, and they have to be on the same team. And for the most part, people took Randy's response as truth. They have built their engine around 4 players, and they don't seem to deviate from that. But one other thing people have speculated is if Gearbox has tried to make Battle Royale work in the Borderlands engine and what they could do with Battle Royale, because they're all about blending different game types together, and maybe we will get something out of them that is a Battle Royale mixed with something else. So now we are in July. We got an article from GameIndustry.biz where they interviewed Strauss Zelnick, the CEO of Take-Two Interactive. And the first story is he mentions why Borderlands 3 wasn't at E3 or why we really shouldn't expect any of their titles to be announced at E3. He said, quote, while there are consumers here, E3 is not primarily a consumer show. We are more effective doing business here than doing promotion here. Then he talks about having a AAA title per year, which is Red Dead this year, and hopefully Borderlands 3 next year. So this was a quote from the article itself. They said, quote, the publisher is still revising its strategy for tentpole releases. Last year, Zelnick and 2K president David Ismailer told us they want to reach the stage where it can offer at least 1 AAA title per year. Zelnick tells us development cycles are becoming longer than we'd originally expected, but reaffirms his company's commitment to this goal. Obviously, this year we have Red Dead Redemption 2 as a frontline title. Next year we have a big title coming from 2K that's a frontline title, which I'd say it's safe to assume is Borderlands 3. He also talks about microtransactions a little bit, which is something in the current gaming landscape that a lot of people are worried about. So first he says and acknowledges how relevant microtransactions are and says the fact that recurrent consumer spending was nearly half of our business in the last fiscal year gives us latitude to invest even more judiciously in our upcoming titles. Then, when asked about Borderlands and microtransactions, he said, quote, well, Borderlands had 9 paid downloadable content packs, so recurrent consumer spending isn't only in-game payments or virtual currency. It also means downloadable add-on content. Our goal is always to engage the consumer after initial release. If we have something that doesn't work, we won't be able to do that because no one wants more of it. The type of engagement is going to vary product to product. We're not focused on driving that engagement so we can monetize. We're focused on entertaining the consumer because that's what keeps them involved with our products. And then the engagement will naturally lead to revenue and profit if we do so properly. That's the end of everything relevant to Borderlands in that article. Now let's move to September. YouTube channel Triple S League. They claim that Borderlands 3 was in the localization phase. They said they had 2 independent sources, both saying that Borderlands 3 has begun localization. Localization, if you don't know, is the process where bigger companies outsource work to begin to translate their game from its native language, in this case for Borderlands 3 English, into other language for markets that the game will be sold in. This process can be quite lengthy for larger RPG style games like Borderlands, because it's not just quest text, it's also weapon text, all the special items, all the dialogue, so it's a big task. And it's one of the last things to happen in the development cycle. And with this information, the game has already begun localization, helped bolster the 2019 release speculation. Then in October, Randy Pitchford responded to these rumors where a fan linked Randy the video and said, quote, what do you think? To which Randy responded saying, quote, I get all my credible news from random YouTube videos, so thanks for the link. Also, I just had 2 independent sources that do not know each other confirm to me that the earth is flat. So obviously Randy Pitchford has to deny these claims. The game has still not been announced, and he responds to almost every new leak or news about the game. So it's not surprising, even though we later in the year get more info that makes localization seem very true. So later in October, we got the bad news that some malicious fans had bought the domain for Borderlands3.com and placed a password-protected doc file on the site that will download malware on your computer. It's not Gearbox starting some early marketing for the game or any special Easter egg for fans to follow, so don't go to the website, and just in the future, be skeptical of any type of info like this unless Gearbox is promoting it themselves. It sucks, it's not real news, but worth mentioning. Also in October, we were given some clarification on what was happening with the characters from Tales from the Borderlands. In September, Telltale shut down, if you didn't hear, and people were now hoping that Gearbox would keep the characters in their world. So the fan said, quote, "I just finished Tales from the Borderlands and I got a question. Should we consider, irrespective of our choices, the main plot points of the game canon to the Borderlands franchise story? Also, please say no." Randy responded saying, "Or why no?" The fan said, quote, "While that was no dramatically rhetorical, I guess I had a problem taking it that in that game, of all the characters, it was decided to kill off Scooter. But by being canon, there's a ton of potential for others and other events to step in." Randy said, quote, "We do not intend to undo anything from Tales. We also like many of the new characters and believe some of them have a role to play down the road. That said, when we discover Tales conflicts or is inconvenient to our lore, we're not afraid to keep doors open for us." So what that means is most likely we will see these characters again, whether that be in Borderlands 3 base game or DLC is still unknown. But if I had to guess, I would say later rather than sooner. And then finally we get to December, where we get most of the news and a lot of the important news. And in December we are given another update from the Tales characters, this time from the voice actors themselves, and more specifically Troy Baker, who's the voice actor of Reese in the game. When asked about Borderlands 3 on Brian Deckert's YouTube channel during a live stream, Troy had this to say.
"Is there any way you could tell us if Reese is in Borderlands 3? Oh, I can't. Is Borderlands 3 in now? Is there a Borderlands 3?
Is there Borderlands 3?
We can't tell you anything about anything.
I don't know.
So, as I said before, I wouldn't be too surprised if Gearbox hasn't even reached out to Troy yet to work on this game. Telltale closed pretty recently, and I think Gearbox's first priority is to create their own unique story without relying on previous games as crutches. But once again, this could all be up for debate. Maybe they will have these characters in right from the get-go. We really just don't know, but it is worth mentioning that these characters will show up again. So we got the messages from Twitch streamers that it's, quote, "a good time to be a Borderlands fan." The first post came from streamer at Cream, or CRREAM. He was able to play Borderlands 2 VR at TwitchCon, and we know at this event several Gearbox and 2K staff members were present, which led to some cautiously optimistic hype about this statement that good time to be a fan, whether that was about Borderlands 2 VR or this upcoming title. People really weren't too sure, and we're kind of cautiously optimistic about just one person saying it, but this statement was brought to even more people's attention when another streamer, Admiral Baru, said the exact same thing on his live stream.
Baru, did you hear about the supposed DLC for Borderlands 2? All I'll say is, I have talked with 2K and Gearbox, and it is a good time to be a Borderlands fan. That is all I'm allowed to say in regards to anything.
We can't follow nothing. Let's push on a little bit. Maybe we'll pick up the trail again.
Which some people in the community are taking as an early PR statement that Gearbox might be telling bigger influencers that we can't say anything about Borderlands 3, but it's a good time to be a Borderlands fan. Baru was big in the Borderlands scene and does have a working relationship with Gearbox Software, so it's not entirely out of the question that he might know more about the series that the general public might not. Whether or not this is real though, or a PR statement, we aren't too sure. Then in December, we got the huge leak that revealed 3 of the 4 Vault Hunters in Borderlands 3, and info from 2 separate channels. So the info started with the YouTube channel The Know, then was broadened even further by Submato. So on December 6th, they posted exclusive Borderlands 3 details. I already made 2 videos covering the Vault Hunters and these leaks, and most of you guys, I assume, have already watched the leak video. I don't want to rehash too much, especially considering how recent that news was and how well the video did on my channel, but I'll just give the highlights. So the characters will be Mose or Mosey the Bot Jock, Flack the Beastmaster, Zane the Operative, and an unnamed black melee-focused Siren female. On top of that information, it was recently found 3 of the 4 Vault Hunters' early artwork. The Siren was cut out, but we can see Mosey's character model is the same as the characters from the Unreal Tech demo, and Mosey's mech is also called the Iron Bear mech, which I mentioned earlier in the Nerdvana podcast, and was one of the longest development cycles for a character Gearbox has ever created. And it makes sense that this was one of the first characters Gearbox made for the game and wanted to show it off in a tech demo. The other characters, we heard that Flak is still being tweaked a lot and hasn't made it out of the alpha phase yet, just due to how the pets work in game. Zane the Operative, the Node claimed that his action skill would be turning invisible, somewhat like Zero, but other people say he has gadgets, so not too much is known about him. We do have their early designs. Basically, almost nothing is known about the Siren female. We know that her action skill might be broken up into 3 different pieces. All of that I covered in my last video, so go check out that. There's a lot more to cover, and this video is already getting very long. So, a few other just highlights. We are going to be visiting other planets, which we knew. There will be a time jump from Borderlands 2 to Borderlands 3, and we know that Tiny Tina will be older in this game. The main enemy of the game will be the Children of the Vault, which we actually heard about previously in the Battleborn Borderlands 3 Easter egg, along with the main villain, the Calypso. Atlas will be returning as a weapon manufacturer. NPCs have been revamped. They will have skills and the ability to revive players. The game will feature multiple vehicles at launch, and the game itself is said to be 80 to 85% done. So obviously, go check out my full breakdown for all the details, and we're going to keep moving along. Steven Chapman, another YouTuber, did his own research into Borderlands 3 and found a lot of new info. The first being from Ghost Punch Studios. They are an independent game studio that works on most of 2K's properties and have worked on every Borderlands game, including Tales from the Borderlands and Borderlands 2 VR. They originally had a coming soon picture on their website with a game from 2K and Gearbox. Then once this news broke from Steven Chapman, myself, and Supmato, they changed it just to a Gearbox logo. Then one of the biggest pieces of info is that localization was confirmed for Borderlands 3 from a LinkedIn account by Noriko Stanton, who lists her time at 2K as a localization quality assurance tester for the Japanese language, and lists one of her game credits as Borderlands 3. So we also see that she left the company in June of 2018, which means that Gearbox has been working on localization since at least June. And Randy Pitchford might have not been completely truthful back in September when denying these rumors and flat out making jokes about it, if we see that workers have been working on it since earlier this year. Another story worth mentioning about Borderlands 3 is that Jim Faranda has been cast as the new voice of Claptrap. Originally, Claptrap was voiced by David Eddings, who voiced the game since Borderlands 1, but left the company in 2017 to work for Rooster Teeth. And we learned about this new voice on episode 120 of the Third Shift podcast. The voice is basically identical to David Eddings, and this was something Randy Pitchford has talked about in the past, that they have tested different voices before, and that people, even David Eddings himself, can almost never tell the difference of who is who. Final thing I have to talk about, more tweets from Randy Pitchford with the number 3 in it, and people kind of freaked out. So it started with the, my to-do list has just 3 things on it, but I also have 3 meetings scheduled before 3 p.m. Is the universe trying to tell me something? So Randy Pitchford, after he posted that, it kind of blew up for his Twitter, and it got people thinking that Borderlands 3 was going to be announced at the Game Awards, and when it didn't happen, people then kept bothering Randy if the teasers were real, and he actually responded to one. So a fan said, quote, "Why hype up Borderlands 3 days before the Game Awards and not reveal anything?" Randy responded saying, "Whatever connection you made with the Game Awards is in your head, or in the heads of whoever told you there was a connection." Another fan said, "Can you just release one teaser for Borderlands 3 so we at least know it isn't cancelled, or in development hell? Just a screen cap of a title or something?" Randy then said, "What do you think I was doing? Look what that earned for me." So this was Randy Pitchford trying to tease the game by making tweets with the number 3 in it, but I do agree that it was the completely wrong time. He should have waited till at least after the Game Awards before trying to pull a stunt like this, especially if the game is going to come next year according to the earnings report, and even in the know, they mentioned that the game will most likely be announced in the first or second quarter of next year. So Randy just could have waited till after the Game Awards, started teasing it. It would have been a great way to start off the new year, especially if we're going to see something soon. That's where I'm going to end this video. Hopefully this is the last year-end roundup I have to make, and next year we'll actually get the game. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like and share the video. Go check out all the sources down below, or all my full video breakdowns on the topic. If you guys want to hear the full details about any of these stories, subscribe for future Borderlands content, and I will see you guys in the next one.